Hi, I'm Franklin, and this is How I Graduated from Law School with a Job, Law School Strategy. How I Graduated from Law School is a series of interviews with practicing attorneys and legal professionals to find out more about their career journey. The purpose is for you to hear about how other legal professionals became employed and started their career following law school, or in some cases, how they relaunched their careers at a later stage in their professional life. It's not just young lawyers that we'll be talking with, but attorneys across all experience and practice areas. The purpose isn't to try and prove the legal job market is perfect, because it's not, or convince you it's easy to get a job and there are a ton of jobs out there, because there simply aren't. However, I do hope you gain some insights, ideas, tips, or other pieces of advice that can help you and your law school strategy. Because I do believe that if you work hard, follow the advice that we share, you'll be closer than ever to graduating from law school with a job. On this episode, we have attorney Tony Stimson from Tampa, Florida. Hi, Tony.
Hey, Franklin, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining us today. So I'll kick it off with the first question. Why did you go to law school?
Simply put, in high school, I had taken a law course of some sort. I can't remember the exact title, but essentially we went through A Time to Kill, and that's a book that's written by, for some reason, the author's name's slipping my mind right now. But essentially, we're walking through how to go through a trial, what that looks like. And it was a little more, I guess, played up at the time. We thought there was more drama to being an attorney than there actually was. But it was a high school class. They wanted to keep us engaged. And I think at that moment in that class, reading through the book, going through the trials, I really figured out, this is something I enjoy and this is something I want to look into more.
Great. Yeah, so it was a John Grisham book that made you want to go to law school. That's pretty awesome.
Exactly. John Grisham, I always forget names when I need to bring them to mind.
Absolutely. So what did you study before law school?
So before law school, like I said, that I took that class in high school. That prompted me to go into taking pre-law courses. So as soon as I got to college, you get an advisor. They ask you, where do you think you might want to go in 4 years? And of course, everyone knows what they want at least 10 times and you switch majors. But I was pretty sure I wanted to go to law school. So he advised me at the time to take pre-law courses and take government classes. And I enjoyed it. So I just stuck with pre-law all the way through undergrad and went straight into law school.
Now, we might have some viewers that are considering law school at this point. So would you recommend pre-law courses? Do you think they helped you going into law school?
That's a great question, because no, I would not. And I would suggest doing an undergraduate degree that would develop your writing, develop your critical thinking. I think some of those things are found in a pre-law course, but not as extensively as if you were doing journalism or broadcasting and you really worked on your interpersonal skills, speaking skills, and writing skills, and having someone critique that. I think doing a minor in pre-law and taking some of those legal writing courses would be advisable, but I think you could gain a lot more value out of another degree that would kind of enhance your creativity.
Absolutely. I would echo the same statements, because I had the same experience with my pre-law course of study when I was an undergrad. But I think unless you can actually get over to the law school that might be on your undergrad campus, you're really not going to be able to experience what a true law school class is like. So yeah, great. The one question that everybody is coming here to learn about is, how did you graduate from law school with a job?
Good question. I did not immediately job search after law school. I decided to get my LL.M, and that was because I wanted to study international law more intensively. Some law schools have programs that you can do that, and you do all of your electives focused on that. Mine didn't, so I decided to pursue an LL.M. However, right after my LL.M, I did graduate with a job, and I can jump into that. Essentially, I thought I was going to be in DC, and I took the Maryland bar and I passed, and that's where my wife and I wanted to be. We love DC, great place to live, thought it'd be a great place to work. I sent out about 100 applications to the DC area and tapped some contacts, did a little bit of networking, but it was tough because I wasn't actually in DC at the time. I was here in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is the Tampa Bay area. Here, I sent about 20 resumes out just randomly, just in case maybe something would bite. And I happened to apply to a position on LinkedIn. And the company that eventually hired me was very, LinkedIn savvy, Twitter savvy, Facebook savvy. They were all about social media, and they were all about bringing in people from social media and from referrals and things like that. So because I applied on LinkedIn, they just gave me a shout out. I will also say that job was not an attorney position that I applied for initially. It was a paralegal position, but I read the job description and I said, they actually want an attorney. They don't want a paralegal. So, and I said that in my interview and I got a good laugh.
Nice. So let's back up just a little bit. Your
I
LLM.
said a lot. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. Yeah, that was perfect. So your LLM, did that help in the job search, you think?
I honestly think my particular circumstances, it did. So, and I can explain a few things. If you want, you can add a link into my LinkedIn. You can see I put a link right to my resume. People can check out what I've done. I did a lot of volunteer time. That was one thing that stuck out to the employer. The other thing was that I had taken the extra step to study something that I was really interested in and foregone the job. Just so happened that general counsel that hired me had done the same thing when he was starting out. So he decided to pursue his LLM in tax, which was totally different than an international law LLM. And he was up at NYU when he got it, and then ended up practicing as a tax attorney and didn't like it and jumped into in-house. So we had a connection on that level. And I found that out because I did some research. I found out what the name of the general counsel was, found him on LinkedIn, was able to check out his profile. He didn't have it locked. So I knew some things going into the interview that I could kind of touch on.
Great. So what did that, so that was that one part of your job search. You said you sent out a bunch of applications in the DC area. What else did you do to get a job?
So essentially what I was looking for, I said that job was not an attorney position. They made it into an attorney position. Because I was taking the shotgun approach, which sadly enough, that's the approach we have to take. That's the approach we're advised to take at this point in this economy. I just started looking at job descriptions that were even for paralegals and thinking, even if I throw my application in there, they might reach out to me. And even if I don't want that job or they don't want me, that's one more contact that I've made. And they might know someone who is looking for someone with my skill set. So I kind of took that approach, even looked at some of those higher end paralegal positions, not entry level, but like senior level paralegal positions where they want a lot of legal research and writing. They want a lot of ability to work on your own without much supervision, a lot of things that would sound like a first year attorney. So that's what I was looking for. And I put out on LinkedIn, I updated my Monster profile. I went on all the different job search sites, Indeed and all that. Didn't sign up for any of those. I was just trying to get hits on where jobs might be. And then I would go directly to the company website and apply.
Perfect. Yeah, that sounds like you covered all your bases there. So you mentioned that you started out in this job. So you're in a different position now, correct? So what did that look like, changing jobs?
It was tough. So this is one thing I would say is I accepted a lower salary because they had only budgeted for a lower salary for my position, even though they gave me an attorney position. Of course, there were some promises made, you prove yourself, the money will be there, all of that stuff. I had an awesome experience at my company. I had an awesome experience with all the leadership, everyone I got to work with, but the money just wasn't there. They couldn't provide it. So I had some tough talks. I had some soul searching because I loved my job. I loved the people that I worked with. And I had to decide, what was best financially, because continuing at that salary pace just was not going to cut it. So I had to start looking, and oddly enough, one of the recruiters, so knowing recruiters wherever you go will help. One of the recruiters that was at the company I was originally working at had left, but I had become friends with her and her now husband. He was, a New England Patriots fan, so we connected on that level. And he worked for the company that I now work for. And so he had some insight, and he hooked me up with the internal recruiter and said, hey, this guy's great. I don't know if you have anything now, but if anything comes up, just keep him in mind. Introduced us. He happened to be a New England Patriots fan as well. So we just kept some dialogue going. And I kept in contact with this particular recruiter for about a year. And it was nothing, at the early stages, I wasn't really looking. I just made contact with him. And it was just friendly, and we talked about the Patriots. We went out to have a beer, all that good stuff. And then when the time came where I was really serious about looking, it took me about 4 months to get the job. And it just so happened that it was internally at Kforce where he was working, and the timing was right. So they had a position open, and he immediately put my name in the hat without me even knowing. And then he went back and said, hey, I'm suggesting you for this position. Send me an updated resume and all that stuff.
Wow. Yeah, that's an awesome experience, and a great networking opportunity, and great steps you took along the way in terms of keeping and maintaining that contact. Along those same points, I have 2 questions for you. When you were looking at job openings, did you pay attention to the number of years of experience, whether that was outside of your range of experience or within it? And then also, how did you find, or did you go and find the recruiters or internal HR people that might have been in charge of the posting?
Those are absolutely 2 great questions. And all my friends who are recruiters, everyone says, ignore the year requirement, apply anyway. And so I took their advice. However, I still would look, and if I saw 20 plus years of experience, I didn't bother, because if I knew it was going to be an arduous process of going online and filling out all of their stuff, I wouldn't do it. But if they had a quick LinkedIn apply and it was 15 years of experience, I'd do it anyways, just in case. And sometimes I had recruiters reach out to me, add me on LinkedIn, and said, hey, you have a great profile. You're just a little too young. You don't have enough years of experience, but like to stay in contact, that kind of thing. So I think there was some benefits to doing that. Something might strike a chord with a particular recruiter or a particular hiring manager about your resume, or about who you are, about what you've done. So those were tips that I was getting from people who are recruiting, and not necessarily only recruiting in the legal field, but doing professional recruiting. So I did ignore them on most of them. Some of them I took it and said, this is going to be a long application. It's not worth my time. And then what was your second question again?
Yeah. So how did you reach out to recruiters, or did you try to find the internal HR people that were in charge of the posting?
Absolutely. One of the things that I think is a good tip is, if you've worked for a particular company for a while and LinkedIn tells you if there's anybody that previously worked at your company now at this new company, which is great. So I would reach out and say, hey, I see you worked here. Either 1, we worked together, or 2, I'm like, hey, I'm an alumni. And, I would look to see if there was, bad blood or not, see if I could see any, I absolutely hated that company, and then maybe I wouldn't message them. But most of the time, I think people have pretty good experiences, and at least in our line of work, it's usually professional. You're usually leaving just to further your career, not because of bad blood. So I would just reach out and say, hey, I saw you guys have this job posting. Would you be interested in introducing me to the hiring manager? Or if it was the recruiter specifically, hey, are you the one hiring for this position? And that would strike up a conversation. Almost every time I've done that, I've had immediately someone from that company add me on LinkedIn and then message me and say, can you please send me your resume? So-and-so said something.
Nice. That's a great way to get a follow-up after all that.
And I don't know if that's true for everyone, because I was ignored a few times. I don't know if that will always be the experience. I wouldn't say that stands true. Some people will be like, oh, why does this guy message me? I don't know him. Why is this girl messaging me? Leave me alone. But I think it doesn't hurt to kind of use that as a stepping stone to get your foot in the door.
Exactly. I mean, it's kind of like you never know until you actually reach out and try. You're never going to get a response that way. So why not try and at least maybe get a response?
Exactly.
So let's kind of switch gears here. Where did you ever struggle at any times, get kind of upset or kind of frustrated with the process? And or any challenges that you faced? Obviously, your requirements can sometimes be thrown back at you, but can you kind of describe how you overcame any struggles?
Yeah. So even in the first position that I got, I'll talk about two scenarios. One where I'm first getting my first job, and then two, when I've reached my year and I'm really analyzing what I want to do, where I want to go. So first off, just getting, your foot in the door, I obviously had to convince them that they should hire an attorney instead of a paralegal. And so some of those hurdles were, well, how do we know you have these skills when all you've done is law school? So a lot of the things that I would try to point to is my volunteer time and my work ethic. Something that I did was I volunteered for a nonprofit, and I helped a group of undergrad girls start a nonprofit while I was right at the end of my 1L year. I, help them apply for their status in state, help them get their 501c3 status, and it was all approved on the first time. And I did these things because, one, I wanted to help, and I do want to give back, and I think that's what we're called to do as attorneys. But two, I knew they would help teach me, a lot about the law, and I can use them as references when I'm trying to get a job. So those early years in law school, getting involved, I think is huge. It's great if you want to be the 4.0 student and you don't have any time to do any extracurriculars, or all you do is law review or moot court. That's great. That's going to get you into a totally different field. But if you're going to be, a B or C student, and you can do that, but also spend time doing other things, I think that really shows how well-rounded you are and how committed you are to others. A lot of companies that I've talked to, they really take seriously being committed to others, because it shows you're going to be a good team player, it shows you're going to be committed to them, and it shows that you have a good heart. So though I think that is what helped me overcome that first one. At the 1 year mark, patience. So after I decided I needed to look elsewhere, it was 6 months of searching and a lot of rejection. I had 3 interviews. I thought they all went great. One was with a very large corporation, and I won't say it in case I ever work for them. And one interview was excellent. The actual person I would be working with on a daily basis loved me. They wanted me. The project manager, which was kind of odd to think about, like a lawyer being a project manager, but someone I wouldn't have any contact with or anything like that, absolutely hated the fact that I spent a lot of time volunteering. It was really weird. And that actually let me know, okay, maybe at least for this position and this person, I really don't want to work for them if this person is going to harp on the fact that I spent time volunteering, which I think we're ethically called to do, but we don't need to argue about that.
But I think that's also an important point. A lot of people forget, like, we don't really have the luxury of, when we're interviewing, to realize that we're also evaluating the company. And I think that's a really great point to draw from that, is you're supposed to be thinking, is this somewhere that I can see myself working? And that clearly was not the reaction and the mindset that you were getting back in return.
Absolutely. And that is exactly what I learned throughout that process. Because at first I was going back to I need a job. Well, I had a job. So now I'm in a position where I have the luxury of having a job. I'm continually gaining experience. Now I can be a little pickier. And that was like one of my first interviews right out of the gate. Took about 3 months to get and patiently wait. But you know what? I did learn that I don't have to go and work forever the first job that opens up. I can be patient and I could pick and choose. Does it suck that I'm not getting paid what I want to get paid? Yes, but I'm also employed and I know there's others out there who are not. So definitely something to draw from. And if you're looking to make that move, to remember that you are valuable and you are gaining valuable experience. So the biggest thing is to don't get frustrated during that time. I found myself going up and down, frustrated, then not. Then I finally was like, you know what? I'm going to make the best of where I'm at. And I'm going to try really hard to continue to impress them. And I would say the last month before I left, I really took initiative to get involved in many different areas of the company, areas I hadn't even touched before, just helping out, offering my advice on compliance issues, things like that. And it all got back to the CEO, and he was getting wonderful feedback to the point where he didn't want me to go when I was finally making that decision to move on. And I tried to make, the best of that situation. But during that month, I gained so much more experience than I had in the past 3 months because I was kind of like, I'm job searching. I'll do my job. I'll get it done. But I decided to really get as much experience out of where I was at. And that carried over, and I could talk about those experiences in my interviews, which was great. All that said, it's easier said than done to keep a good mindset, to be patient. And all I can say is the best things you can do is network, make friends with recruiters, keep them as friends, really truly be invested in them. Because they're going to know if you're just keeping in touch with them, waiting for that particular job. If you stay invested in people, you take an interest in things that they like, they're going to remember that. And you're going to be memorable to them. And when an opportunity arises, they will say, hey, I know someone who would be perfect for that position.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great advice. So last question, and then we'll kind of wrap things up here. But let's say that you are about to graduate from law school or you've just recently graduated. What advice would you give to yourself? Would there be anything you would do differently or do the same? Kind of give us some last remark or closing advice.
Oddly enough, I volunteered a lot. I did a lot of pro bono work, but I would have done more if I could. And I would have tried to do a little more diversifying in where I volunteered. So I spent a lot of time in nonprofits. I probably should have gone and worked for a law firm for a semester, and even not making any money, just volunteered extra time. You have time to do things in law school. Don't get bogged down in the books and get stressed out. I think the fact that I was able to do more during law school helped my sanity, helped me keep it, and allowed me to really just diversify myself. But I would say I could have done more, which would be more appealing. And especially if you're coming from a lower tier law school, you have to do more to separate yourself apart from the Ivy Leagues and the top 50 schools, especially if you're in a town where you have one of those number one schools and your law school isn't necessarily the number one school. You have to do things that are going to separate yourself from them. And just because they got that degree and all they did was get that degree and you did X, Y, Z, you're really going to set yourself apart.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony. I appreciate you taking the time to talk today and share some awesome insights and some great experiences.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Franklin.
And thank you for watching, and make sure you subscribe for future episodes of Law School Strategy, How I Graduated from Law School with a Job. See you next time.